Hello, I'm Evan Brand. Welcome back. Board certified holistic nutritionist and certified functional medicine practitioner. Talking with you today about intermittent fasting, how to do it, and some of the other strategies that I bring on board with my clients when I'm suggesting they follow an intermittent fasting plan. There's a lot of buzzwords out there. Intermittent fasting is one of them. Ketogenic is another one of them. There's a lot of misconceptions, misinformation, and also a lot of snake oil in this whole industry because people are pushing things and magic programs and magic pills and potions and powders to help support these, but it may be unnecessary if you just follow some of the dietary principles. Now, I suggest getting tested first. Now, I'm a biohacker. I like to see data. I like to see numbers on a piece of paper so that I can track people and see what progress they're making. So I always look at a hemoglobin A1C and then a fasting insulin, and you can get both of these tests done probably through your conventional doctor if you just ask them. Sometimes they don't run these biomarkers, but hemoglobin A1C is going to be your average blood sugar over the last 2 to 3 months, give or take. Fasting insulin is going to be a great indicator because if you have an elevated fasting insulin, more than likely you're going to have some excess body fat. And if you just look in the mirror, you see that you're overweight, you see that you've got some excess fat, especially around the belly area, we can assume you've probably got more insulin than necessary or you're insulin resistant. And so those are two things that you want to take a look at. Basically with intermittent fasting, the easiest way to do it is to just push your breakfast back. Delay your breakfast later. So if you wake up at 6 or 7, you're not eating breakfast at 6 or 7, you're going to push that back a few hours. And I'll explain why and how this whole process looks on a daily schedule. But that's the best way to do it. So ideally, kind of the standard intermittent fasting approach is going to be a 16-hour fast followed by a condensed eating window of 8 hours. Now, this doesn't mean that you're cutting calories. This doesn't mean that you're eating less food overall. You can still eat the same volume of food that you're eating now. All you're doing is you're changing the timing, you're changing when you're doing that. So that doesn't mean you're eating this much food, now all of a sudden you have to eat this much food and you're doing it in less hours of the day. No, you can eat the same amount of food, but you're just doing it at a different time of the day and you're condensing it. So let me explain. I eat dinner around 4 to 5 o'clock. So let's say you can do the same, a 5 p.m. dinner. That's the last meal of the day. And then you track these dots here, 5 p.m. all the way till 9 a.m. the next morning. So let's say you eat dinner tonight at 5. You don't eat again until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. That's a 16-hour fast. So you eat, followed by fast, followed by eat, and then the arrow goes off the page because then you move into another day. You come back on the page once again. So 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., that's your eating window. That doesn't mean you're eating only 2 times a day, 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. You may, if you're someone who's really advanced, you're really adapted to using fat as a fuel source. You're eating coconuts and macadamias and avocados and grass-fed beef and pastured eggs, and you've really got a good keto-adapted or a fat-adapted state of your metabolic health. You may be able to do only 2 meals per day, 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. However, most of the time I'm going to be doing about 3 meals per day. So that could look like 9 a.m., then let's say 12, or maybe 1 p.m. So 4, 5 hours later, and then we'll push it 4 hours later, 5 hours later to 5 p.m. So a pretty good strategy that's going to work for most people could look like this: a 9 a.m., a 1 p.m. or a noon, and then a 5 p.m. 9 a.m., 1 p.m., 5 p.m. So that's 3 meals in a day, but that's all in an 8-hour window. And that's it. You stop here. You don't snack afterwards because that's going to raise the insulin levels back up, and if your goal is fat loss, then you're not going to want to raise insulin. Every time you eat a meal, insulin has to go up to deal with the glucose from that meal. Stop here, revisit the next day. You're going to be hungry. That's normal. Hunger is a good thing. Now, the reason that I say down here on number 3 is to support the adrenals and the blood sugar, because so many people, they've disrupted their blood sugar for so many years. They've had a diet that was based on refined carbohydrates, crackers and rice cakes and other types of refined sugars and carbohydrates. You may crash if you try to go a 16-hour fast right out of the gate. So you may need some adrenal support. You can check my other videos, I'll link them up here, about adrenal fatigue, about adrenal dysfunction, and how you can use adaptogenic herbs to help support you. Basically to keep you a little bit more regular, keep you a little bit more stable. Then in terms of supporting blood sugar, you've got chromium, which is a great supplement that you can use. If you just want to use food as medicine, that works too. You're not going to get as much chromium if you're using something like cinnamon. But let's say you're doing a baked sweet potato at your 5 p.m. dinner here. If you pour some organic cinnamon on there, some good grass-fed butter, that's going to keep that blood sugar more stable. Therefore, hopefully you're not going to have that giant dip of blood sugar that could potentially wake you up in the middle of the night and disturb your sleep. So I say support adrenals and blood sugar, especially while you're getting adapted to being on an intermittent fasting protocol. And then lastly, integrate cyclical ketogenic diet. And I've chatted with Dr. McCullough about this on my podcast, so I'll link that up here or down below as well. Basically, if you're following the combination of intermittent fasting, which is just a condensed eating window, we didn't talk about what to eat, right? And so that's where the cyclical ketogenic diet comes in. So you could be looking at maybe a giant smoothie for breakfast that's going to have half of an avocado, could have coconut flakes, could have cacao powder, could have some grass-fed whey protein, or maybe a good organic pea protein, maybe a hydrolyzed collagen protein for breakfast. Then you look at 1 p.m. You're going to look at some pastured meats. So let's just say you do a palm-sized portion of some good quality meats. You do a giant salad, arugula, kale, spinach, collard greens, chard, whatever's in season, whatever you love in terms of greens. If your digestion's compromised, you may have to lightly steam those if you just can't handle raw at this time in terms of your greens. Put some apple cider vinegar, put some olive oil, some macadamia oil, avocado oil, throw an avocado in there, whatever you like. And then same thing for dinner. Good quality fats, moderate protein, lower carbohydrate. And you're going to follow that 4 or 5 days a week where you're going to be producing ketones. Now, do you have to measure your blood to measure the production of ketones? I don't think so. I think you can turn yourself into a disordered eating person if you start to measure and get too concerned about measuring your blood. Now, at first, this may be helpful to see, okay, this dietary approach, how is this working for me? But to keep up with that long term, I just think it's a bit obsessive and can create more stress than it's worth. But 1 to 2 nights a week, like I mentioned, you can integrate with dinner a big old baked sweet potato. Put some butter, cinnamon on there. That's really going to help to act as a refeed. That's going to repair, restore. That's going to help adding a little bit of excess carbohydrate compared to normal. That's going to help to replenish the glycogen. Now, if you're an athlete, same thing applies. Ketogenic diets are great for athletes. If you're overweight, same thing. Ketogenic applies, and you mix that with intermittent fasting, you've got a hell of a combination here. So this is Evan Brand signing out. I'll talk with you in the next one.